Hello, this video is to help you with your pre-lab question where you have to plot your own or my own data in Veusz. So we're just going to go through the instructions sheet just in case you need a little extra help with it. The first thing that you have to do is download Veusz. So we'll go to this link in your pre-lab and it should open up a page like this. Depending what system you have, go ahead and click on that link. With Windows it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but with Mac you have to trust this program. So have fun doing that. If you need help, ask me, Dr. Lori, or your TAs, and we'll be able to get that set up for you. So yeah, once it's open, we're going to open up the application, so you can just type Veusz into your search bar or finder, and it should open up. Let me open back up the how-to. And next we're going to import the data. So the data is on Canvas and you can download it and it should just be a CSV. So to import it, we're going to go over to data and select import. You'll have to find the file, so yours might be in your downloads. Mine is already here. It's going to be this UVViz sample data set. So we'll click it and we'll see that we have two columns and we have wavelength and absorption. Our header mode is going to be the first row, and you don't really need to change up anything here. There's a few other things in here that don't really matter, but header mode, it's important. You can use first row or multiple. Just depends. First row is fine for this one because you can see first row is headers. And then there's one more option down here that is link datasets to files. So essentially you can uncheck this. The only difference is if it's linked to the file, then you can open up this Veusz on other devices. If it's not linked to the file, you'll have to have the data set on that computer too. So typically I have mine selected. After you do all that, we're going to go ahead and select import. You can see you'll have this imported data sets. We have two columns with these links, and we're good. And if I look over here on my dataset file, we can see we have UVViz, absorption, and wavelength. Now once we have our data in here, we can begin to plot. So we'll notice that we have a page and a graph. If we select graph, there's an X and a Y, and we need to add to this the plot points with errors. And we're going to we can rename this. We'll just call it UVViz. But there's still nothing on our graph. So what we need to do is go to our Properties tab, which is right over here. Sometimes your tabs will go away, and if they do, we can go ahead and, where is it? Go to View and Windows and add it back. So if I deselect it, it's gone. But if I go back to View and Windows, I can add them all back. So if you close out of any of them by accident, not a problem. Just go to your Windows, add it back. We'll only need our editing, our formatting, and our properties one, so you don't really need this data one. You can get rid of it if it's in the way. But now in our Properties tab, we're going to select our X and Y. So it took our headers from our CSV file, and our X is going to be wavelength, and our Y is going to be absorption, and you can see we have a very crazy looking graph right now. Good, we have our data points plotted, but now we want to make it look pretty and more understandable. So we'll just follow the instructions in the how-to document, where we're first going to go to our editing tab, and under formatting we're going to select background. So I'm going to click on page 1, we're in our editing tab in page 1, and then formatting, we're going to go to background and we're going to hide it. So it's hidden. That means we're just going to have this transparent background. And you can change the size if you want to. For this class, the size is fine. And next we're going to go to the graph and change some things. So we're going back over to the formatting. Same thing, we're going to hide the background, and we're going to get rid of the border. And you can set this as default if you're working on multiple things in your document, so you don't have to do it for every single graph. And now we're going to play around with our axes. We're going to start off with our X, and on the triangle one, the main one, we're going to select outer ticks. This just looks better, and we're going to use that as default style. We're going to deselect auto mirror and use this as default style. So now you can see on our sides we don't have that, and I'm just going to make my graph space a little bit smaller so it's easier to work with. And now we're going to go over to our minor ticks and select hide. Now this just gets rid of the minor ticks. You can keep them on if you need them, but for most things you don't really need them. We don't really care about those individual spaces for a wavelength. After that, it's looking a lot better, but there's still a lot going on, and we're going to fix it up. So we don't need this full -1 to 3, so I'm just going to cut this down a little bit and set it 0. And we'll do like 2.5. Let's do 7.5, make it a little bit better. And now our graph is better in the space. And same thing, we're going to go to wavelength and change it up. So you can either click on these or you can click on them in the graph space. And same thing, I'm going to go back over to my properties tab and just cut it down a little bit. So we'll do 300 to 800. And now we can see we have this decay curve. You can go a little bit further out, but really just preference here. This is a fine range for it. We also need some labels, so I'm going to go over to my Y again, and where it says label, I'm going to add absorbance, and then it's units. And you can do this however you want. If you want to use parentheses, that's fine. I tend to use lowercase with slash, but it's all up to your choice. And then same thing over here, we'll change this up. Wavelength, if I can spell it correctly. Did I spell that right? Looks right. And then this is in nanometers. And now we have our labels. And now axes are looking good, our space is looking good, but there's still a lot going on with our actual data. So in my editing tab, I can either select UV-Viz and it'll let me look at the actual data set, or similarly I can just select it on the graph. And the first thing we're going to do is go to this main one and we're going to get rid of our marker size. There's no reason to have it, it just muddies up the graph. Now we'll focus on the line, and the line is 0.5. We can make that a little bit thicker by going to width and making it 1 point. That's typically what I like to use unless there's a lot going on in the graph. And now we're going to select a color. So red usually isn't a great color, at least a bright red. Typically you want to use a color that is colorblind friendly. So when I use red, I tend to use this red. And I use this one because this just matches up all my color schemes and has good contrast with the rest of the colors in my color scheme. Another good way to choose colors is based off the color of the actual compound or molecule or whatever it is that you're working with. So here this is a palladium nanoparticle UV-Viz, and it's like a brown black, which isn't the nicest color. So we're just going to go with red because that matches up my color scheme. So after that, you're essentially done, but we can still make it more aesthetically pleasing. For the assignment, this is fine to turn in, but I'm just going to change up some other things to show you how I would set it up. So for my font, I usually don't like Times New Roman because it doesn't look great. I'm going to change it to, where is it? Do I not have it on this one? Oh, no I do. Cool. So go away. Is that how you say it? And then we're going to use this as our default style. And we're going to do that the same thing for the text. And then use this as our default style. And now both our X and Y have the same style. And I'm also going to change up the decimal placement for my Y-axis. So if I go back to the number in the formatting tab, you can see that there's a format here. And if you click through them, it starts to change up what we can see. And typically we want the same number of decimal places. So here we can use 0.2f, or we can change this to 1f. And now they all have the same number of decimal places and it looks much nicer. And now once you have your graph the way you like it, we can go ahead and export it. So if I go to File and Export, I can browse and then choose a place that we can export it. So we can just put it in my OneDrive, that's fine. And then you can change what you want to save it as. So I usually do a PNG or a JPEG. You can change the DPI of it. I typically go very high, so that's why mine is set to 300. And then we can hit export. And it should be saved there now. So if I go ahead to open it, We can see because it has a transparent background, it looks a little weird here, but I can put it on anything on different colored backgrounds and we'll have this nice graph, and you can put it right into your Prelab assignment. That's it. If you have any more questions, email your TA, Dr. Lori, or the LAs for the class. See you in lab.